Hey guys, today I'm working on replacing the orifice on a Ford Expedition. Welcome to the bar channel where I'm either building it, assembling it, repairing it, or just replacing it. Let's start by just removing the battery cables and then we'll go ahead and pull the battery out from the holding bracket. Once that's done, we need to clear space to get to where you would connect your low side refrigerant line. So you'll need to disassemble this area right here. Take the bolts apart and spread it apart to get to the line. Let's go ahead and remove this battery hold down tray. That's where the batteries sit in and it's locked into place. We'll go ahead and slip that out to give us more space. By EPA laws, you need to recover all refrigerant in the proper recovery container and uh, dispose of it accordingly. You cannot just let it release into the atmosphere and it's dangerous to the ozone layer. So once you recover the refrigerant, you want to open your line where the orifice is located. Right here, you'll see two nuts. One will be a 7/8 and the other will be a 3/4. There's not much space, it's very tight, so it'll take a little time to get this nut separated. Pay attention that you're not twisting the refrigerant line, but you're loosening the nut. The only way to know if your orifice is clogged is to hook up a gauge to it and it will tell you the pressure of the system. Once you know the pressure of the system, then you know you don't need refrigerant, but you have a restriction problem. Once you get that tube separated, you want to get your orifice puller, and the orifice puller goes in and you will pull out the orifice. Look at the condition of this orifice. You will see that it's completely clogged. Because of this clog, it's not letting refrigerant flow to the evaporator, and because of that, it's you won't get the cooling capacity that's needed. Here's a new orifice what it looks like. You want to be careful that you don't contaminate the screen and clog it up. The new orifice and the old orifice, you can see how clogged this was. That's why this vehicle was not cooling correctly. Now this is how the orifice tool works. You need to The tool needs to go in and it connects to the little tool clip right there and it pulls the orifice out. You cannot just use a needle nose pliers and pull that orifice out. If you break it, you're gonna be in some deep trouble. So spend the $15 and get the orifice puller. Once you get the orifice out, you want to blow out the lines first. You can use compressed air or nitrogen. Blow out the lines and then you'll push that orifice back in. Look at the line towards the firewall and you'll see two dimples that's there. You have to make sure the orifice is aligned and go down to where that dimple is and it'll stop by itself. That's where your stopping point is so you don't push it in too far. Once you're done, you can reconnect back your lines, and once the lines is reconnected, you will need to do a pressure test. There's not enough space. You can see it's a very tight spot to work in, so you need to get as much as you can out of the way so you're able to work your wrench. Now once I get this nut tightened up, I put some pressure into it, some nitrogen, and with the nitrogen I'm gonna pressurize the line. Once the line is pressurized, I'm gonna start doing a leak test. Now to leak test it, what I'm using is some soapy water. I'm spraying the soapy water right where the joint is that I open to see if there's any bubbles. Just checking for bubbles right at the joint. So some soapy water will do it. Once that's done, you'll leave the nitrogen in for a good 15-20 minutes to make sure it's not dropping any pressure. Once that's done, you will go ahead and just start pulling a vacuum on the system. If you don't have a vacuum pump, you can get one at your local auto parts store. They usually have a loaner program where you can just borrow it for 24 hours and then return it. So you want to go ahead and pull a vacuum and evacuate all the non-condensables out of the system. I have some gauges that I use when I do air conditioning, so I'm using these to pull my vacuum. While I'm vacuuming the system, I'm trying to put back the vehicle back together by inserting the battery holder and the battery cover back in place. The last part to go back in is where the gauge connection is. Now the refrigerant capacity for this expedition is 54 ounce of refrigerant. So what I'm going to be using is a scale and I'm going to weigh it in. And weigh it in approximately 54 ounce of R134A. And that's a lot of refrigerant. But again, this is an expedition that has a front and rear air condition. Your vehicle needs to be running to get that refrigerant in because the compressor is what will suck the refrigerant into the system. So there I'm checking my scale, see the amount of refrigerant going in, and I'm also have a thermometer into the vent. You want to put your settings on your blower to the lowest settings, not max air, but the lowest settings, and it'll slowly pull your refrigerant in while the engine is running. This is a process, and you have to be patient as the refrigerant takes time to go into the system. And as you can see, it's 54 ounces of refrigerant over 3 pounds of refrigerant needs to go into the system. So when you see my numbers go up on this scale, it's because I'm probably touching the scale, so it shows like 31 pounds, but it's not really 31 pounds. Now I got my thermometer in the vent. I put in the lowest setting, and I'm waiting for the temperature to start going down and blowing cold. Meanwhile, I'm checking the scale to see how much refrigerant is going in. Now I've got over a pound in, so I'm going to keep monitoring it. I am also monitoring my gauge setting to see what my pressure is on the gauge because based on the ambient temperature outside will determine your pressure on the gauge itself. So I'm using a combination of weighing in the refrigerant and the gauge. You'll also see a compressor cycling on and off. As you can see right here, it'll cycle and it will just keep running. So you just have to monitor the cold air coming out of the vehicle and your refrigerant going in together with your pressure. You can also use the gauge that comes with the canister when you buy the refrigerant at your auto store. You can use that gauge to put the refrigerant in. Just know how many ounces you're putting in and look at the gauge that they gave you to see where it's on the green. You don't want to overcharge it to the red because your air condition will not function properly. I always want to make sure that I'm using a thermometer to measure the air coming out of the vent. And as you can see, when I first started, it was 86 degrees and it's going down. Now it's at 54 and it'll keep going. Meanwhile, I'll keep checking the refrigerant, see how many pounds I've got in there. I'm about 3 pounds, over 3 pounds now with refrigerant. So I'm gonna just keep adding and try to balance based on the pressure. You will see that my scale is fluctuating up and down, um, and that happens from time to time. But when you research the amount of refrigerant a vehicle takes, you'll get different answers online. So I went with the average, and I got a little over 3.5 pounds, close, 3 and 3/4 pounds of refrigerant into the system, and I'm keep checking the temperature. When I was done with this system, when I recharged it, I think the coldest I've got it down to was about 37 degrees. It shows 43 here, but I didn't record the rest of the video. I'm trying to keep it short, but I got it down to about 37 degrees. And that's all. This was due to that orifice being clogged. Now you'll see the temperature chart based on the ambient temperature outside. Hope this video helps. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel.